Well, we'll probably have to have a 23rd.
That's great.
No,
Our main thing is how we gonna do it.
yeah, we're gonna put
If we all do it,
Every kid deserves it.
Okay, then, have your attention. We're ready to get going here. Call to order the City of Stanton special meeting at Stanton City Hall, July 24 at 5:30 p.m. Our first item on the agenda is our restaurant tax ordinance 16-008, and it is a discussion that we're going to have regarding that. So I think all of our city council have that. I assume that you do. If you don't have one, you got an extra.
I usually have.
Don't have an extra. Okay. Any?
well,
Tommy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm kind of the one that asked for the,
Yes.
Uh, you know, one of my worries right now is the collecting it and staying on top of it.
Okay.
Because right now we've got some that are, you can see that our budget last year, we didn't make our budget in the restaurant tax because we've got people behind.
Okay. Did you have some suggestions or?
Well,
I mean, there's some things that are in here in terms of.
There's some things that are in there, but I think there could be, well, one thing, whatever we do, we need to do it every time, you know, make sure it's done to everybody the same way. I want that. I mean, we shouldn't have somebody behind 3 months, in my opinion, and still operating.
Okay.
Well, it's clearly stated, but on or before the 20th day of each calendar month.
Yeah,
But we've had people that have had
Hardship or whatever.
hardship very bad,
Right,
you know.
understood.
deaths and stuff, and it's just, you know, you have to be strict, but you also have to show some compassion, you know.
Yes, oh, yeah.
Well, I understand
Yeah.
the particular one, but
Well,
it
there's
was like,
two that got,
yeah.
another one that
The
got
other one
behind.
was already a year behind before that
Yeah,
happened, so
yeah.
we've got to do
Well,
something.
that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
That should have been took care of.
I have some,
I think we've closed the gate, we've closed that one pretty much
Well,
at this point, but
in the
I
past,
understand your
Yeah.
concern.
a little bit move forward, I guess.
well, in the past, we've been able, and I don't know, that's a question for Dodd, I guess.
He's gonna address it.
Can we set a date that says we take away a business license if you ain't followed up or made an agreement? Is that
With due process.
with due process?
The ordinance doesn't speak about that. What the
I
ordinance,
understand that, yeah.
what the ordinance speaks about is basically penalties and interest and putting liens. And then it alludes to litigation. It doesn't quite come out 100%, but, you know, I think we can tighten that up. But I think clearly today, the council can instruct staff to send out final letters to those that are behind, and maybe even send out a complimentary letter for those that are doing it right. But in that complimentary letter, explain to them the penalties if they don't do it right. Because quite frankly, the city and the tourism commission end up better off in the long run when they don't pay timely, because 10%, I mean, we're really not doing them a big favor by not enforcing it, because they gotta pay 10% on top of that, plus 12% interest, which, you know, that's credit card interest, you know? So I think we could send out a letter. I think we could file a lien on both the personal and on the real property. So if they own their restaurant building, we could file a lien on their property. And then we could institute a lawsuit, but and I've expressed this to the mayor, any lawsuit that we institute, I would prefer to have that after we have an interlocal agreement with tourism worked out. That's a preference. I mean, you tell me to jump, and my question is how high? And so if you say file a lawsuit, I'll file that lawsuit.
consistently.
Okay.
And then why should I pay if somebody didn't pay for a year and a half? So my thing is, whatever we're doing needs to be done every single time, and I'm not sure that our ordinance is.
Is that one's getting caught up though, right?
Yes.
Way I understand.
Well, no, well, that, but I'm just,
Yeah.
We're talking about
Just-
future
At the-
attorneys.
I'm just talking
yeah.
about
He just
future.
stated in
Future,
general,
yeah.
and future.
Yeah, we're not dwelling on, I mean, we
Yeah.
want those people to pay and get caught up, and it's a really good time for them to do it as we go to
Okay.
put some more teeth in our ordinance.
All right.
I have a couple things, is it my turn?
That's
Mark's turn.
Mark,
Well, I just think that, from a council standpoint, all that, what you said is fine and dandy, that comes from the executive side as far as enforcement. And I think that, obviously with a good attorney guide, I think that, but as far as our ordinance, I'm interested in making sure we have enough teeth in the ordinance. Some of the points that I want to talk about is the audit authority and record inspection powers, and maybe a retention period that maybe we require the restaurants to retain them. Maybe enhance our penalty structure, like as, the first time you do it, okay, you know the consequence will work on you, and then scale up from there with repetitive offenses. And then automatic, you mentioned it earlier, automatic license revocation procedures with some sort of due process and a hearing or whatever, safeguard. And I think our administrative procedures is pretty clear. 20th of each month, they've got to pay it. That's kind of the stuff I'm looking at is, can we add to that ordinance other than what we have now to maybe help the mayor and Ann and Teresa and them have a little more teeth to enforce it?
Will we have to amend that, Todd? Is that what we have to do?
Yeah,
We had talked a little bit about that,
We
you and I.
talked about the necessity for that. The ordinance is kind of all over the board, okay?
I agree with you.
And that's why, at first I was thinking, do we really need an interlocal agreement? And then the more I got into this, the more I thought, yes, we do need an interlocal agreement because the ordinance is just all over the place. So if we can get that taken care of, then I think that the more likely outcome is that the city will be in charge of collection. That seems to be what's happened in the past, and what's the most fiscally responsible, because you've already got staff that can kind of do that. Then the question becomes, do we have enough tools to make this happen? And I don't think that there's enough tools. For instance, it doesn't clearly say that litigation can be commenced. It's implied. It talks about how you can collect attorney's fees, and you would think the only time you would collect attorney's fees would be through litigation, but it doesn't come out and say that. Additionally, that 10%, what I've seen some communities do is do 10% a month. And so, that really gets you attention after about 3 months, and then you're paying a 30% premium, and because think about it, once on the 21st day, you owe 10%, but then a year and 1 day, you still just owe 10%. And so there's no incentive to do anything, but if you start to add on and do 10 in May and 10 more in June, and by the time you get down to a year, it's 120% of what the original bill is. That lest we forget, this is other people's money. It's not their money, it's other people's money.
Right.
And,
They're holding it for
they're holding it, and then it becomes real toxic for them. They gotta get it done, and then you don't have to file a lawsuit. And it might, I guess conceptually, a restaurant could close down, but if you can't handle 3%, transmitting 3%, then maybe you shouldn't be in operation anyway, if your margins are that close.
But I don't think it's in their margins. It's on top of, it's a tax.
Well,
Right.
if they're not paying it, they're using it.
Well, I know that's what's happening, but in theory, that's not how it's designed.
Yeah, it's not designed that way.
It's not designed to work on that.
Clearly, it's other people's money, and they shouldn't be including that in their
Bottom
their
line.
profit margin and bottom line. It shouldn't even be on the books, but.
Well, it's
But-
like the 6% sales tax. I'm sure the state,
Yeah.
They got more teeth in it than.
not gonna
Yeah,
let you.
the state's scary if you don't pay that.
Yeah.
Right.
And they got the personnel to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but,
And the affordable.
I do think Councilman Rice is correct, that you all can add more teeth to this. But that was my recommendation today to the mayor.
Yeah.
Send out a final letter, give me numbers, I'll start preparing liens, I'll start filing liens. He kind of told me to move up the interlocal agreement on the priority list, so I immediately, after I hung up speaking with the mayor, I called the tourism attorney. I think we've got some talking points. I just need to get guidance from my folks. She's gonna go back to tourism, get guidance from her folks, and then the lawyers will talk and see what we can come up with. Then you'll have a document you can vote on.
Okay.
And you'll know what the issues are, you know. Right now, it's just issues all over the place with no answer to any of them.
Okay. Billy, anything else? Billy?
No, that needs to be established first.
Okay, Mark?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, it's always, you know, I agree with everything you said on that, Doug. The main issue here is trying to work out something that's consistent and something that's in place, and I was making a few notes trying to keep.
All right.
But I know we're talking about the restaurant tax, and this is in line with the restaurant tax about collection. But I think we need to have some kind of uniform collection schedule for not just restaurant tax, but business licenses and water bills across the board. I don't know if we need to amend or update what we have in place already for the other ones. But I don't think it should be three different sets of standards or penalties. I think it should be consistent. The negative part about it is, and this is why we had a delay on the one that we've been talking about, excuse me, is that we try to show some empathy and sympathy for these citizens when they're in tough times, especially when they have personal issues going on. It gave us the flexibility to do that. And this, by doing this, which I'm in favor of doing that to be uniform, it takes away that bit of humanity, I think. And I'm not trying to, you know, grandstand. I'm just saying it literally takes it away. And I think that's what we really need to do, because we have based things in the past on emotions, trying to work with people and understand their situations, put ourselves in their place. And it's kind of backfiring on us several times. People take advantage of that. And we haven't done a lot. We've had to move on to litigation and start those proceedings, which nobody wants to do, especially in a small town. We want to try to work it out, and we still want to try to work out things. But I think by putting this standardized in place, just like any other, and you all know what I did for my whole life. If you have a state law or whatever, you have an electric bill that's late, RECC has a way to just turn you off. You're done with it. There's no emotion to it. And I'm not knocking RECC. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, if everybody knows the rules going in, then everybody can play by them fairly. And I wanted everyone to know that we have tried to work. We've all tried to work with everybody in this town, trying to help them out best we can to a point, to a fault.
Right.
And I think whatever it is, we need to be uniform, but we can't forget about business license and water bills. All those have to be included in this discussion when the restaurant tax piece. It's about collection is the problem. That's it on that. So
Okay.
I think that's, I agree with Tommy. He's the one that started that we need to figure out something. I think that's what we need to keep this discussion going on, is figure out how can we get that resolved.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it.
I'm good with, you know, like you said, get this in place,
Interlocal.
yeah, interlocal, and then the ordinance tightened up to where we've got, you know, we know who's doing what, when, and why, and
Larry?
I agree, something needs to be done.
Okay. Jason?
Yeah, I agree with our attorney here. Interlocal agreement needs to be hashed out first. Then, like you said, you know, maybe for repeat offenders, you can increase the penalties. But maybe there can be a application for some type of hardship, instead of just, you know, someone pick or choose. I mean, it needs to be a process to, if you do, I mean, because you gotta be able to justify, you know, to, why one's paying and another's not. But some kind of hardship license for a month or a short period of time or whatever.
Some kind of greater penalty.
Yeah, or like application for some type of grace period in hardship type situations.
I think typically, you're saying like wait 30 days before you
Right.
start taking action.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
some type of grace period.
Yeah,
15
yeah,
to 30
but-
days.
But it's got to be enforced. I mean,
And there's a little difference in like say in the restaurant tax, they're taking it in.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
if it's a
They're-
water bill and
yeah.
you've been off work with a parent that's dying for
Yeah.
6 weeks and you just don't have the money, that's a little
That's
bit
different
different.
story.
You could have a little bit different, parameter on that as far as letting people, catch up a little bit. But, like say, I had a woman tell me, I need that money to pay my bills. I said, but it's not yours. This has been years ago. And she said, but you don't understand, I need that. And I said, at the end of the day, when you count your drawer out, figure out 3% and put it in a jar, put a lid on it, and you don't touch it, then
Yeah.
you've got it. But I need it. And I said,
Yeah, well-
I couldn't quite get it across to her. Then raise your prices a nickel. If you need that 3 cents to pay your bills, then you raise your
So
prices.
you can guarantee they're gonna, the 6% they're putting aside or
Yeah.
paying.
Well, one of the-
You notice
one of the-
they're not cheating the state 3%, giving us 3%, the state 3%, they're
No,
giving
no.
the state 6%. There's a reason why they have some
6%.
cheats.
Well, I think a lot of them forget that the city needs it too.
Yeah.
That's another big deal.
Well,
Tommy?
and then one thing he said, and I seen what he's talking about, the 10% every month.
Yeah.
Springfield, Kentucky, one of the small, I looked at like 8 smaller cities,
Okay.
tourism, they're all their ordinances. And out of those, I think 5 the city collected. There was 1 that the city or the tourism could collect. And then the other 2 were tourism, but, as far as the 10%, he's right there with theirs, I think it was Springfield. Don't
So
quote
they
me that.
increased it
They increased
every month.
10% every
Well,
month.
see, maybe we shouldn't let it get that far and just close the doors. I mean,
There's
Well, that's what we
automatic
tried.
revocation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Some
mean,
cities have
'cause that
automatic
could be-
some
revocation.
cities
Lord.
just close it, but.
Business license gone.
Yeah.
The revenue cabinet, they have a process in the Grace Department. There's 2 mechanisms where Grace applies with the revenue cabinet, and they do that with employers collecting money from their employees and the withholdings. They're required to make those withholdings. If you don't timely make the withholdings, you can get charged interest, you can get charged penalties as well. But there's even more enhanced penalties if you're habitually behind. And that is discretionary with the cabinet. And I believe that they can't waive interest, but they can waive penalties. And so, and I don't know how the revenue cabinet does it, that's their hocus pocus. But I'm sure we could come up with a due process mechanism to do that. So, as we think about designing a new ordinance, we could put in there something similar, that, it does escalate over time, but, you can make an application for some type of hardship, and they can say, well, somebody died, my accountant died, and, I gave it all to my accountant, and the doors was closed, and it wasn't my fault, I didn't know how much to give you. Would you abate some of the penalties? I'll still pay the interest, and then, you could have some kind of process where that decision is made fairly. So, yeah, I mean, if the revenue cabinet can do it, I'm sure that Stanton can do it as well. It's just all in the details on how you all want to do it, if you wanted to do that grace, concept.
Because me, if you don't have something like that in place, and then somebody has something happen, you say, well, let's go,
Well, you don't
yeah,
want
you
to.
don't want to do it for them and not,
Don't want to reward your best
Yeah.
friend and punish your worst enemy.
Yeah.
That's bad feng shui.
Yeah, and say, well,
But
they,
if you do have a standard that says, we'll look at this, this, and this, and you have a neutral person that can make that decision, then yeah, you can accomplish grace. Grace can be accomplished. I know police officers do it. I mean, do you give the ticket or do you give a warning? There's something that goes through your head.
After a warning or something, you usually get the
It
ticket.
depends on how the conversation. It discretionary.
It is discretionary, I'm trying to be real blunt.
And they're probably not as lady on repeat, you know.
You can't have a hardship 12 months a year.
Yeah, true,
That's gotta be.
Well,
true, yeah.
It might be a cousin too, or a friend or something like that. You just never know.
Can I ask a
Anything,
question?
what's that?
When new businesses come in, are they given this letter of the ordinances that say what the penalty and the interest is?
And they're told, yes.
But there's not like a packet or something that goes with a new business
No,
that
it's just
has?
I know the majority of the
It's-
ones I know, they come in wanting the ordinance and wanting the.
Right.
I don't know that we have one before we have a ballot, sorry, not a ballot.
Packet.
Packet, but yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be a bad, just to have one.
Well, I can't speak, but we make it pretty clear, you know, whether it's verbal or whether it's written. They kind of know what is expected of them. And I don't know beyond that.
But
Anything else?
Something said Tommy about consistently. We looked at something and we can't wait 18, 12 months for somebody to get behind, because that puts a bigger hardship on that local business. Is there a way where at day 15 you're late, a letter goes out reminding them, hey, if you don't pay by this date, this is what's gonna happen?
Can you get this? I don't know.
Well, I don't see why you couldn't have, I mean.
Well, again, I think,
Give them some kind of that letter or a phone call or something saying, hey, you're late, it's due, you know.
well, I think that probably needs to go out after the grace period.
Yeah, just as soon as the,
29th, I think
Yeah.
would be the time to send that.
To let them know that, you
Current
know,
ordinance, that's a great period.
let them know they're late,
So
did you
it's
forget?
20,
No,
what
it's
is
not.
it, 28?
Yeah.
20.
Yeah, so if by the end of the month they haven't paid,
Yes.
then a letter goes out. I mean, that's what we had talked about, you know, and that was always my main concern is, you know, what are we gonna do with these people that consistently haven't paid? I mean, I know one that hasn't paid, but yet they're gonna do a whole remodel to their restaurant, so, you know, are they using our money to do that, or, you know, if they've got money to do that, then they've got money to pay this tax.
Oh, I want to pay, like, I'm want to toughen the ordinance up. Like,
yeah, and I think that's what we're
That's
talking
where I
about.
stand on it.
The process,
Yeah, I
we need to
agree.
toughen up.
Yeah, you're talking about
Just
not
give-
waiting 3 or 4
no,
months and
yeah.
say, oh crap, they
Yeah.
haven't paid their
Yeah.
tax.
Well, I
You're
don't-
saying you need to be on
we
it.
need to be on it like from day one, the month one, and not wait 6, 8 months and go,
And
oh,
that-
they're behind.
That
And then
procedure
you
could
go
be,
off, and then you go
I
after
think
that whole
that could
amount.
be built into
I
the new
think
ordinance.
we're already doing that. I mean, we
We
stayed
yeah.
pretty much on that.
But we haven't sunk the teeth in it.
Right.
We don't have enough here to sink the teeth,
Yeah.
to put an end to it quick.
They all
Definitely
know
needs to
they're
be
late,
amended.
and we do, you know, inform them of that. But, you know, we don't know, kind of the process that we're working on, we need to kind of, you know, make it tougher. I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure if whatever we end up putting into the ordinance, it can be applied retroactively either. Do you think?
No, I don't think it would be retroactive. You know, that wouldn't be appropriate,
It'd
but
be from here
it would
forward,
be
right?
So
prospective
it
in the
just going
future.
forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, and that's what I'm saying, I know we're waiting for an ordinance with them. I don't know the issues they have with the interlocal agreement. But I think changing stuff like the 10% and tightening up, I don't think they would have an issue with us, because we gotta do 2 readings. So if we had something ready for next meeting, could we do the first reading, then have that time between it to change some things? And then by the time the second reading, then you've done got it, because we're 2 months behind. And that doesn't have to be whatever, like I said, I don't know what part of the interlocal agreement they don't agree with.
Well,
But
we're working on that.
Yeah, I think Dr. Sand, like, maybe by at least October, having it published and active would be a reasonable goal.
So-
Yeah, well, we'd have August, and then we'd have,
Well,
we do a first reading in August.
Well, that's what I'm
and
saying,
do a second
but
reading in
if we
September,
don't-
or even have a special meeting
Yeah.
if it
Yeah, you can do a
gets
special
situated
meeting to
between.
expedite it.
We could, yeah. We could pass an ordinance in 2 days if we.
Oh, I'm saying that, I'm just, I don't want us to put it back and wait, kick it down the road, that's what we.
No, this is the number one
Needs to be
priority
up
for me.
right here, yeah.
Councilmember.
Me
Let me
too.
kind of see if I can summarize.
But he's right, that he needs to, and I agree with you.
Well, I agree with that too.
But as soon
But
as-
nothing's in
Yeah.
place, hopefully within 2 months, we can work out an agreement,
Yeah,
is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And, you know,
yeah.
but-
So basically, to summarize then, step one, we're gonna try to really work hard to get this interlocal agreement. So you'll be working with the attorney there, and obviously it'll come back to us and we'll go back to them. And then second of all, then we can go to the ordinance and obviously do some updating on that, make it a little bit more of the process, a little bit more tighter, those kinds of things. Anything from the city council beyond that? Anything else? On that? All right. So you got your dot.
Knock it out.
Knock her out. All right. The next one is our speed study update. And this is coming right from the lips of John Turner. He's the transportation engineer for District 10. I spoke with him twice, and the data was collected. The method was a speed monitor sign that was continuously functioning for several weeks, including peak and off-peak periods from the, most of you remember, Save a Lot store to the Mountain View Drive-In. And here's what the data he came up with. The study found the 85th percentile of vehicles was within the 45 mile per hour to 53 mile per hour range with 0 speed-related crashes. Due to these factors, this does not justify the city to request to reduce the speed from 45 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. And so he did make a couple suggestions, increase the enforcement presence there out there on Highway 11. And also you can request the state grant the city a permit to post a speed monitor sign along Highway 11 and 15 per year.
We've got those signs, right?
We've had the sign.
Yes, but
I've
we
got
have,
a question.
we have to get a
To do
permit.
that.
We have to
We've
get
been
a,
doing it for years without a permit.
Hey,
no, there's nothing
when you
on
make
Highway
it,
11.
when you make
Yeah,
it
on
a permanent,
15.
We put our speed sign
So-
out there.
Yeah,
yeah,
didn't
it
we?
was there,
Police department
but it
has.
wasn't permanent.
No, it wasn't permanent.
Sure.
So I may have to do some research on my own, but
I mean,
correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it required in the state through any residential area, even if it's a state highway, to be 35 mile per hour at the maximum? Am I wrong about that? Because
I don't-
residential starts past the drive-in.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I do know that
And I
the
don't want to
state,
fight the state over it.
they have a book of warrants, is how they refer to it. And the old saying, we'll do it if it warrants it.
Yes,
Um,
and that's what John
Yeah,
said.
and you gotta look at that book of warrants. And for instance, you know, if just 1 or 2 people die on a road, do you reduce the speed there, put a stoplight? And if it's just 1 or 2, my experience has been no. But if you have 3 people dead, then you might get a stoplight there. So that, it's that detailed. And so someplace I got that old book of warrants, but if you can request that, the answer lies in that book. And I think that's what
Yes,
Mr.
that's
Turner's
what-
referring to.
I used
He
the
just
word-
he flips open that book.
Okay, let me
I
say
used the word
this.
justify, but it
The
was.
highway department is wonderful. Let me say that first, okay?
Okay.
They are, they help me a lot, they're great. But I don't understand the conflict of you can't put a reduced 35 mile, I understand the data, 35 mile per hour past the drive-in down there like they did on the other end of Stanton when there's no residents but schools, which is understandable. But you can put 2 stop signs on Washington Street without any study. It makes no sense. I don't understand the concept behind those 2, warrants or no warrants. I don't understand what warranted that.
Take down their flashlights.
And then take the, and I just don't understand the process. Please help me understand it.
Flashing lights.
They took them down, they're
I
gone.
mean, we just want a 35 mile per hour
Never mind,
sign
never
Oh, turn it back up.
at the end of town to slow them
Beneath
down.
ladders.
That's all we want. So,
And they
I
were
guess,
throwing
you know,
bombs at
Uh-uh.
Is
Okay,
there a
so-
35
But I
miles
appreciate Mr.
anywhere
Turner
out
doing the
there?
study.
Yeah,
I
he-
appreciate that.
Well,
I just don't
Yeah,
understand.
once you go past Sable Lot, turns to the
I
35.
was gonna say, I was thinking this about around my house. It was
Yeah, right about
35.
where your house is about
Yeah.
35.
Yeah, just as you come around the
So
corner.
unfortunately, it's gonna take somebody getting killed to.
I just remember.
Well, that's the thing, is on Washington Street, they've had quite a few accidents.
I just
there.
remember
More
the very-
accidents.
I know,
But the first year I worked in Stanton, which was 1980, I worked an injury accident down there. Honestly, this is the truth. Just past Mr. Martin's house right there in somebody's front yard. That was one of the first accidents I worked at, and another one on
Yeah.
213 on the old bridge.
Wow.
And I know the data shows that, but we have been very fortunate not to have bad accidents, because they fly coming around Welch's
And
Cut.
there's been a lot at Welch's Cut.
Well, anyway, we did our due diligence, so.
But I appreciate you
But
getting
yeah,
that.
and I understand that, but I would still like some
Yeah.
enforcement myself. I
Yeah,
preach
that
this.
was a suggestion.
I
We
preach
can, we can.
Because I'm sure
Plan
when they
B,
look
I
at
guess.
this study, they look at, I
But
mean, speeding
you can't
tickets
be
were
there all the
wrote
time.
in that. And there's no speeding tickets.
Well,
wrote
and the
in
reality, unless they're doing moving radar, and it's actually moving, if they're sitting, everybody's gonna be on it. So unless they're doing moving, they're not gonna really catch anybody.
I think
And-
it's easy down through there.
Yeah, you can kind of,
It's like shooting fish. in a
Yeah,
barrel.
but then hiding's kinda, I'm never great.
You're not supposed to hide?
Well,
I mean, even sitting up front, I think, I know the data shows that, but when I was there just a few years ago,
Can't hide.
I was talking, state highway dump truck speed.
I'd say if there's a cruiser said that
With me
drive
sitting
there,
there,
that would have
yeah.
been 100%. Nobody would want to pass the speed limit.
All right.
I just know if you go, I think, if you go out there once a month and you start writing a bunch of tickets, then
Eventually, word gets out.
about 3 or 4 months, you're gonna see
All right, okay, thank you. I just report the data.
No, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Forward that to the police department.
No, thanks for
Do they
doing
have
that.
do they have an actual data, how many, I'd like to see their,
Well, I mean,
I'm
I'd
sure
have to
I'll
ask
let
him, I'm
you
sure they
generate.
got it, oh yeah, I'm
I'd
sure
like to
they
see
have.
the traffic for future references, I'd like.
Yeah, you
to
can
see.
get the traffic is, you can go online and get that.
Did they
Whatever
have-
Well,
cars,
I know,
what
but
you're
I know
talking about.
that's what this machine done, cars
Yeah.
and speed, I'd love.
Did they have data on Washington Street for some stop signs?
They probably crashed that.
Well,
Crash data.
I'm sure
Didn't
they're,
have any.
see, that wasn't done by, that was done by the state to do that.
Right.
They're the ones that did that, yeah. I'm sure they did. All right, the next item is our culvert cleanout equipment. You'd kind of asked about that, so I did some research, I think Tommy did also. A jetter, if we're looking at a jetter, of course, that's, we'll shoot through the culverts, wash it out, is somewhere between $3,500 and $10,000. Now, I brought one here, look at it if you like, has a container of water. It's about $8,000, for that one right there, and that tells you all the kind of stuff that's in it and all that. So that's one possible method so that can be used. How about the rope? The tire and the rope, which is, a lot of people do that. That's a possible. Chain and pipe is another possibility.
Did you print out that one we were talking about, the cutter?
Yeah, I got it all here. I'll show you.
The jetter worries me. Will it really push something? There's a huge rock in there.
Yeah, it'll do mostly mud and debris,
That's why,
the loose
that's why I
part.
like the other one, because you put it on the backhoe, you push it all the way through.
And if it's been there for a while, like stopped up, it takes it a while to loosen
But
it up.
I don't
Because
see,
it can be warm, hot.
I just see it being a better tool than the jetter,
Yeah.
but if you, I think, the one I looked at, I think you said was 6, is that it right there?
Yeah. This is one they call the Battle Armor Culvert Cleaner. Oh, I tell you.
Sounds like a good one.
Sounds like a good one.
But that's-
Anyway, what it does is it attaches to a backhoe, and then you just, obviously push it through and then pull it back out.
And it has
So I'll
different-
pass it along, you can just
Different size
see
of
that.
augers if you wanna do, we can buy up to 36 inches if we want.
It acts like an auger, sort of, but it doesn't turn.
But I can't see water pushing out a big block from the middle of it. I worry.
That's somewhere between 5 and 10,000.
Looks like a post hole digger.
You can add extensions.
Actually, it's designed
Add
off.
extensions up to like 4 feet.
Hey, Mark, it is designed off a post hole digger.
Well, I
Except
got
they
one
just
they can borrow.
they just turned it, pushed it this way. Yeah. You got one. This.
As long as you don't tear people's yards up with the back.
So anyway, those
Well, they're
are
not even.
those are basically.
Setting them on the driveway, the way they go in.
So basically, those are the kind of methods to clean out a culvert, unless you do it by shovel, hand, yourself, which you can only get so far in.
If it's 30-foot cover, you're not getting.
What about if the culvert is bent? What, do you have anything that will open a
If it's-
culvert
it's
back up if it's
smashed
bent?
in.
Well, you mean on the ends, that's
Yeah.
easy, yeah, they just, you just
But
push
in
that
the-
up, but
But in the
inside,
middle, the one you showed second, I think was more, because the auger you put on is, if it's a 12-inch pipe, it's a 12-inch.
Right.
So as you force it through, it should open up.
yeah, it does.
Now, if it's got a lot of dirt on top of it, I don't think it, I just don't think it'll have the power.
And you can see it before, how it's bent down, and after, as it goes
After
through.
it comes out.
Absolutely.
You see it, before
And
and
I watched,
after.
I watched
Before and
videos
after.
of it.
And they'll set up on top of the road, and it's on their bucket, and they'll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and push it up, yeah.
Most of them, they're actually sitting in the driveway or the road going back into it. So
And they
don't
got
get
different
it anymore.
sizes, different sizes that you can use and stuff.
And they
So-
add 12-foot extensions, so I think you get one 12-foot that you can add
Some cases,
up
they
to
put that
40.
big one out,
Ain't big,
replace it,
but
then.
I don't think we need that.
Yeah, some of the culverts do need to be replaced. Any
No concrete.
input on this here? What are your thoughts, council? I did the homework, you tell me.
Have you showed it to Richard and
Yeah.
asked them, any of them about
Richard has known about most of these.
Okay. which one he?
What's Richard recommend?
Well, he hasn't seen the one that I found, the battle armor one. He comes back on Monday, so I'll show him that one. That
Maybe we
mean-
can like look at our budget by this August.
He knows about a jetter.
Bring back
Get
up,
his input,
bring back up, yeah.
good quote on one. Good quote on
If
one.
it-
Both of them may, but,
It'd be
you
a
know,
great
if you look
thing.
online, if you both take, the only thing bad about the water is if there's something heavy in there. it just-
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
it won't move it.
Which I can do, I'll look at the battle armor one, you said there's videos on it.
There's
Yeah,
videos.
the vision on
I don't know,
that.
mine,
Same.
when I looked at it
If
was
it-
like a battle line, it was the same.
It'd be a great tool for us to have.
Yeah,
though.
we definitely need it.
After the last council meeting, I went over to the airport area, of course, where they'd done ditching. Ditching looked wonderful, but every culvert was probably 3/4 full of that silt, and that stuff sit there over time. It's
You
like
get
concrete.
ditch, you ain't-
Yeah, and
It won't wash out because it doesn't have enough movement in the water. The water just stands, so it's not gonna push that out. So for us to have something
Go through
to
that.
put in them culverts and pull through or push through, however it works.
That won't be too hard on our city.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think.
Labor-wise,
Yeah.
it wasn't, I mean, he took that back over. And then when you pull it back through, you pull everything.
Pull it out.
The
yeah.
worst thing you'll have to do is shovel it up into a truck and take it to.
Yeah.
the one here, I did talk to the guy, the salesperson for this, and right now it's $45.95.
The battle armor. And you know, have Richard look, he'll know how many extensions we need
Right.
and what size.
Yeah.
I think whatever he thinks we'll use, get it at,
Get a
don't,
quote and
yeah,
bring it to us.
don't just get one size, get a 12-inch, a 24.
Couple of sizes.
Yeah.
So that's the one we're most interested in, is the battle armor one?
If
I
we've
That's
got-
not-
Yeah,
if
I
we've
suppose
got
we
budget
can
for
on
it,
that.
it sounds like the one to
I mean,
get.
everybody, before the next meeting, you wanna look on yourselves.
Yeah, I will.
That's just my opinion.
Now, the state routes, we don't have to worry about that, right?
The what?
There's
State
city
routes.
Well, somebody should worry about it, because they're not doing it.
Like when I bought my driveway, I had to ask the state before I could buy my
Right.
driveway.
Yeah, I've had to do that with several of them
Yeah.
and everything.
Have to have permission.
Yeah,
I didn't know you had to do that.
oh, yeah.
Your driveway goes on there right away.
Yep, it's theirs. One more down there. Okay, the next one is the maintenance building loan updates. You wanted to kind of know what it's gonna cost us. So we got two quotes there, one from Whitaker Bank and the other one from Community Trust Bank. I don't know whichever one you have first. First is Whitaker.
Yeah.
You see the different options there. Option 2 is a drawdown line of credit. And again, just use it as you need it during construction. And then once it's, completed, then it'll roll over to one of those other options, term 10 years, straight term loan, or an amortization for 10, 15, or 20 years. The rate is 5%. And then the next one is from Community Trust Bank, and you see they have a variable, a 3-year fixed, then variable, and a 5-year fixed with a floor of 4.761%.
Which means that would be
be their lowest.
If it gets that.
If it gets that low, yes, correct. That's what he talked to me about.
And Whitaker's is fixed at 5.
Right. So Jason, anybody, any thoughts?
The two options on the Whitaker one, like the drawdown line credit, and just make it more Tommy's alley. What's the benefits of doing that?
Well, the drawdown credit is, you get it all at once, you start paying the interest
Right.
immediately. You draw it down, then you don't pay it till you
Just
draw it.
You're done.
I mean, it may not,
Don't you still pay the interest though?
you can pay the interest as you draw down,
As you-
but you're not paying it on, say, you take 200,000.
Like 100,
Yeah.
yeah, gotcha.
If you take 50,000 out, then you pay on 50,000 until you
Yeah.
draw another 50 out, and then
Correct.
you start paying on it.
And you don't.
And the ad has already gone out, so.
Gotcha. So we don't have to decide on this tonight?
No,
this
you
is
don't
just
have
for
to, just
information.
wanted to
Okay.
get those to you. They're an update, so
Thank you for that.
What was Whitaker's
Yeah, thank you.
rate?
5.
5%.
Okay, now I see.
Okay,
I would
anything
prefer
else?
to see the 10, I'd like to see it get paid off, the sooner the better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like
The 10 years.
10 years. Yeah. Oh, you see all the numbers, so.
Because I'm confident that we can rent what we got there to
Pay it.
easily cover this payment.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right. The next one, which is the maintenance equipment discussion. We have 2 backhoes. One is a 1991 that has 278,702 hours, and a 1999 which has 606,051 hours, a 4-wheel drive, and they're starting to nickel and dime us to death. So I've been in discussion with Richard about probably a used, a new backhoe is somewhere around $130,000, which is something like we have here. So a used one, we are hopefully, since we're kind of in the exploring stage, when he gets back, we're going to go down to Pleasureville, Kentucky. There's a Clark Heavy Equipment, and they have some backhoes there that we would like to look at, and they're all used, but the hours are much less than what we have now, and they are in better shape than what we have now. So at some point in time, we are going to need to invest in a backhoe. We use it all the time, and we will continue to use it. And
So what will we do on the old one? Sell one, keep one for?
well, we got 2 others. Yeah, we could sell the 91. I mean, or the 99, whichever. Richard's kind of the, he's the expert on that. I'm not the expert.
The
So,
91, you won't want to sell the, I'm saying you won't sell the 91.
yeah.
It's not even 4-wheel drive.
No, it's not 4-wheel drive. It's only a 2.
But you'll want to keep one just for.
Yeah, as a backup.
Yeah, okay,
we
so-
actually need to do that. So, any other thoughts on that from the city council? Anything else? No?
One thing, between now and then, I don't know, the govdeals.com, we've bought things in the past from, it's an auction.
Surplus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did notice yesterday after we talked that there was backhoes.
On gov.com, the state?
Yeah,
Is it
it's
the state?
it's government entities or universities that's selling stuff, and we've got an actual account with them and everything. So it's worth looking because
Check that, yeah.
you never know. It's an auction, so you're taking it.
Yeah, I know that Richard and I, we have gone down to the,
Lexington sells a lot of stuff,
Lexington
UK
sells
sells a lot of stuff.
we've gone down to the one in Frankfurt,
Yeah,
Richard and I.
yeah.
And a lot of times they'll have some good, other times it's not really worth anything.
It's just worth exploring.
Yeah.
Yeah, what they're getting rid of is what we're buying. It's what, a lot of the governments have a lot more money than we do.
And I did
Right.
reach out to Glenn Sawyer, and since he has a
Okay.
lot of equipment, I did talk to him. Well, we text, we didn't
Yeah.
like talk face to face. And he's gonna also, he doesn't have anything available right now, but he
knows
said he
a
would
lot of
keep
it.
his eyes and ears open. Yes, ma'am?
When you're getting used equipment, I understand that's usually a feasible, better pricing thing to do. we always required as often as we could to get prior maintenance record, how many hours where they ran for oil change or updates and all that. So we got maintenance records with it, so we bought used. Does the city use that
Oh, yeah.
method?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's
you do
already,
that
it's got mostly hours already when they advertise it, and.
Well, the
and,
hours, but,
yeah,
say you needed to do a
Intervals
oil
between.
change.
yeah.
Yes.
What do they call that, what they do
Yes.
for the cars, what do they call it, the guy that does?
Carfax?
Carfax, there you go.
Yeah.
We'll
That's
call
it.
it a backhoe fax, or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, we always, try to do that sort of thing.
Good.
All right, anything else on that? All right, I have a motion to adjourn. A second, all in favor? Any opposed? Yeah, you get the live stream.